Well, good evening. Another broadcast opportunity. Talk about Tiendo, two witnesses from Revelations chapter 11. The woman and the man. The woman from Revelations 12 that is clothed with light in a woman's vehicle, human body. And the two witnesses who came with the saints, the individuals that gave their lives to the service of Jesus and the Father 2,000 years ago and were brought back as souls to have their third trimester experience, like Jesus said, to be born again of flesh in order to be born again by spirit, of spirit. It requires a human body to be born into the next level, which is what Tiendo called the evolutionary level above human, a many-membered kingdom. They have physical bodies. They travel in physical spacecrafts, but their physical bodies are not powered the same way a human body is by eating food and getting a certain amount of sleep and the light from the sun and water and the elements. Their vehicles are powered by the content of their soul that is grown by the older members, the Father and the Son, to be filled with their mind. Mind is synonymous with spirit, also synonymous with information, data. It's by understanding the words that they give us when they give them to us, so that they mean something to us currently in our current language and environment, that when we take those words in, which include the concepts and understanding, then we are adding to our soul body's growth. And but it has to come from the older members. I was listening to a physicist the other day on the radio from Columbia University with Krista Tippett interviewing him. I hope I got her name right. And it was very interesting to listen to him talking about the boson particle, and which is basically dark matter, I believe. I'm going to just summarize it like that. And also string theory a little bit, and which I have general understandings of, and frankly, I'm not that impressed with all that, but I guess that's because I didn't grow up with that as my focus in my vehicle. It's not that I can't understand it. I can, but I don't really want to study all the terminology and everything so that I understand it better. So in any case, he was talking, and it was very shrewd, the way that his mind has developed. I mean, I'm not saying he was being shrewd, but the way he believed and talked about it was very shrewd, very cunning. And again, I don't think for a minute that this was intentional on his part. I think he's sincere when he says that, for all he knows, there could be a God that created everything, created the Big Bang. But that's just not interesting to him to think that way, given that he sees so much in science that is interesting to him. And he believes that science explains everything, and that actually humans really don't have any choice. In fact, nothing has any choice. Because we're all responding to stimulus according to the physics, quantum physics and particle physics and our interactions with the physical world. And so it doesn't really matter what we we're not really making choices as we go along, but we feel like we're making choices, I think is the way he put it. We have the feeling that we're making choices, which I think that's a very kind of warped way of looking at it. However, well, I say that because what Tiendo said was that the only thing that we are is the choice mechanism. That our physical bodies can operate quite well without a soul making choices. In fact, all human bodies don't have souls. So all human bodies have a spirit, which is equivalent to the mind, our memory, but is that spirit, but also that counts our subconscious memories, and that spirit is also not ultimately indefinitely attached to the flesh. It is formulated by and through the flesh, through hearing and through the senses. That's how we get experience with everything, and that's how our memory is recorded on what we experience and through our senses. But when the flesh passes away, that mind is still in existence because it's operating like a computer, like software running on the hardware. Okay, but the software is actually running on the operating system software. So you've got software layered over software. So the operating system in the human environment is what we call the spirit world. That is the framework. That's the electromagnetic field. That is actually what they say they got evidence of as the boson particle. It's the electromagnetic field that, like I was saying years ago, without any knowledge about this boson particle material, that humans were basically floating in a sea of frequencies. A frequency sea. I even wrote a song about it called Frequency Jungle. Frequency jungle buzzes your mind, alters our consciousness, fades over time. It's a frequency network. It's yours and it's mine. And goes on from there. But that wasn't my idea, actually. T and O were the first ones to bring the idea of frequency to my mind when they talked about how everything was established through frequencies. Now, so the people that become intellectually stimulated by science are actually becoming addicted to intellectualism. And they are a cult. They're the cult of science, you could say, or the cult of academia, another way to say it. There are many of these subcultures, and there's nothing wrong with them. I'm calling them a cult only because people think in general that the only cults are the non-mainstream groups that have beliefs and that are spiritual in some way or talk in religious terminology. Those are the only cults, but that's not true at all. And of course, his group was a cult. In fact, he was, at the time, the cult of cults. And that's why he was hated so by everybody. But virtually everybody hated him. I mean, the individuals that benefited from some of the healings that he did and that liked some of what he was talking about, and then, of course, the disciples that I think amounted to about 120 by the time, by a little after Jesus left. They of course liked him, but pretty much everybody else they might have liked him, but they didn't like him enough to follow him. But then it wasn't their time necessarily, so it wasn't their fault necessarily. We're only responsible for what we're given. And we can only be given what we want to receive. So we have to be a seeker to receive more. And then when we receive more, we have to give it away to others so that we can make room for more. T and Do said that to us all the time. They would come to us and say, "You're not pulling hard enough. You need to pull from us our minds so that we can get the next step. Because until we give away what we already have and you embrace it and absorb it and digest it," which Jesus talked about that as consuming the bread, consuming his body, because it actually does take energy away from the older member. So it is literally consuming their physical body. And that was evidenced by T losing her physical body because of it breaking down. And of course, human bodies also break down because of using their physical bodies. And they burn them out. They can use them and abuse them in all sorts of ways. And because of that, certain things break down. But in the case of T and Do, since Do is actually pulling on T's mind, so if Do is thirsty for the next step, then T would have been feeling that. And that's a physical feeling. For instance, Do, when he was giving a meeting, if we were pulling on him, on his mind, in other words, which really just meant listening intently and not letting any other thoughts come into our mind. That's a true meditation. I mean, there's different forms of meditation, but a meditation when you're actually with the teacher is to not have any thoughts or feelings or anything going on at the time that they are speaking. So basically you're lingering on every word, and every word, you're hearing every word completely. And you're not making judgments on whether you believe that or not, or if, or if it's time to go, turn the stove off. I mean, those things needed to all be out of the way before you sat with your teacher. And of course, Tiendo planned it that way in the classroom, to where all the chores were out of the way when they sat down for a meeting. And then they expected our undivided attention. And if we were giving it to him, Doe would feel it so much so that when he would get out of his chair, he would almost collapse. And he came to recognize when we were pulling and when we were not, whether we were with him physically or not. He could tell whether we were pulling on his mind. The same thing for T, because even though the students were also pulling on T's mind, really the connection was set up to go through Doe, and for Doe to go to T. But if we're pulling on Doe's mind and he's being affected by it, then because he's an older member, he's going to be pulling on T's mind, even while talking to us. He wanted to be the instrument for T's mind. And he demonstrated that many times. And if you want to hear a real good demonstration of that, go to my YouTube channel, which I'm going to put into the chat room. My channel name is 3SPM. I just put it in the Blog Talk Radio chat room. 3 as the numeral 3, S as Stone People's Movement. From long ago, I don't really put any significance to that name now. So So the reason why T's vehicle broke down ahead of anyone else that was in the classroom, including Doe, because in a sense this was his classroom, to learn to be to have the role of being the sole occupant of the throne, as it says in the records. Call it the throne because it's the seat of responsibility for the classroom that he took, that T prepared him to take, and T said all along she was here only to get him going, and then she was going back. Which I've said before, Doe didn't know what she was talking about when she used to say that until after she left, and then he knew that what she was talking about was leaving her physical body. The physical body she took over. So that's why she left earlier. And that leaving was depicted in Revelations 12. I'm going to switch scenes right now to where it says, Revelations 12:15 says, the serpent cast out of his mouth, water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. Well, that is showing that the Luciferian space alien fallen angels and uh, uh, in discarnate form, largely, though they may have had some capacity to send their thoughts to T and O or anybody else they want to send those thoughts to from the spacecrafts. I'm talking about now the descendants of those fallen angels. But largely, I believe that this is happening by the fallen angels that died. The physical bodies died and were buried or cremated or wherever they went. And they ended up being in soul body form to the degree of the growth of their soul body before they broke away from the next level, because they had a little bit of service to the next level in a kind of elementary, domesticated kind of fashion. Like a domestic, somebody that's working like that's not doing the important tasks. The tasks that could actually affect life and death on the planet. They were watchers. They were strictly assigned to observe and then report what they were observing. That's what they broke away from. And because of that, they were bound to the earth and had to be bound underground in order to survive the flood depicted in the Noah flood experience. And then they were left bound, shut up in their underground facility until the next level wanted to let them out to provide an influence to their returning souls that would be taking human vehicles, so that those souls could be challenged to grow faster and would be subject to the same thoughts that the Luciferian space aliens broke away because of. And by being subject to those thoughts and overcoming those thoughts, not letting those thoughts pull them out of their relationship with their older member, especially when the older member is incarnate, so that they don't become dropouts like they became from the older members group. The next level brings them back so that they can actually test those souls that are taking new human vehicles in order to advance their soul body growth through. So that this prison, this Earth prison, for the Luciferian fallen angel space aliens is a training ground. And so the next level was bringing back a number of their members and putting them through the training ground to see if they're strong enough members so that they don't fall away, especially when the next level eventually gives them a non-human vehicle, physical body, that doesn't have any of the facilities that human has. And so if they're clinging to certain human characteristics, mammalian characteristics, relationships like with others, families, relationships, gravitation to the academics, becoming attached to their science or their religion or their spirituality or their drugs or their um, various forms of getting high or happy or feeling fulfilled, their careers. All those things are all opportunities on the human kingdom, in the human kingdom, but they are not of any value to the next level, except as stepping stones and things to get out of for their students when they bring those students back to have an experience with new human vehicles. The only form of reincarnation that is true is when the next level, the level above human, the kingdom of God, kingdom in the heavens, chooses to bring back a human that has died, bringing back their soul, not their vehicle. They don't need the vehicles. Human vehicles, could be grown by the billions very easily for the next level. Remember, for the next level, a day is like 1,000 years. And so it's only been like 6 days since they started the recent experiment, which wasn't the beginning of the Earth, but it was the beginning of that Earth civilization experiment. So that the verse that I was talking about, where the woman is, where T exits because her body gave way, was Revelation 12:16, which came right after that talk of flood out of the mouth. So it's out of the mouth of the serpent that the flood is coming after the woman. So basically she's withstanding all the negativity that's being sent to her by all the individuals that are under Luciferian spell, know it or not. And that amounts to all human beings that have not overcome their humanness and have not filled their soul body with mind from the level above human, from their older members. Humans all have a certain amount of that mind from their older members in the laws that were given that they adhere to. Thou shalt not kill, don't steal, have one mate and stay with that one mate. There were exceptions made, of course, by Moses to that. And one second. So the serpent is casting out of his mouth water as a flood. Now water is actually related to the waves of the people. And actually, figuratively, it's used of many peoples. So what he's casting out of his mouth are the people's thoughts, the people's feelings, in response to what this woman and this male that she gave birth to long ago, actually, but was giving a new kind of birth to, advancing him to the throne, to be the sole occupant of the throne upon her departure. So that was what he was being born to. He was awakened to that by the woman. And that happened when he met Doe, before they had those names, when her name was Bonnie Lou Truesdale Nettles, and his name was Marshall Herf Applewhite. And when they met, that set into motion their memories that they had something to do together that grew, and uh, they soon came to realize that they had come from outer space, were here to fulfill prophecy, and to bring updates to the Bible, all of which they did before they left in 1997. Well, T left in 1985, and Doe left in 1997 by him and his remaining 38 students laying down their lives for their final demonstration to the next level of their covenant with the next level, their commitment to the next level, with even their lives, giving their all, as it said, as Moses said was the first commandment, and Jesus said was the first commandment. And by commandment, we're not talking about something that you're commanded to do or else, but in a sense, that is true. That if you don't want to do it, then or else means you just die, and you don't continue. And if that's satisfactory to you, then you don't have their seed in you anyway, and so it doesn't make any difference to you. You're just going to go on living your life until you die, like everybody else that's in that situation. And then the rest that are not in that situation will die also, but their soul bodies will be taken and stored for future opportunity to come back and overcome the world with the older members incarnate. Whether that's like a Moses experience or a Jesus experience, or more likely like a Moses experience to start. So because T and Doe were carrying on with the program that Jesus started, that required for the disciples to leave everything behind, to join with him, denying themselves, deny their will, taking up their cross, being willing to die in service to Jesus, and following him, literally following the Lamb everywhere he goes, as in Revelation chapter 14 depicts. So, so everybody that was distraught from that experience, for instance, the relatives of those who joined with T and Doe, and everybody that heard about them and didn't like what they were saying, didn't believe in what they were saying, thought it was kind of evil or spiritual or New Agey, and thought it was all from the Luciferians, which they had already actually been entrenched in the Luciferian mindset. That's why they saw the truth as a negative. So that was regularly attacking T. And how did that attack T? Well, through the student body, it attacked T to some degree, because the student was having doubts about being in the classroom, about who T and Doe were. All those things end up being like shoving doubt in T's face, and Doe's face, because it went to Doe also. But T took the most of it because she got whatever Doe's problems were as well. And Doe's problems were, in addition to his own, which probably varied, were probably reduced quite a bit, to him maybe not even having any problems that he was contributing to T's demise through. But the students certainly were sending negative thoughts to T and Doe whenever they couldn't maintain their thought control. So for instance, if a student was daydreaming about the time they spent with their brother fishing and having a good conversation and drinking some beers, first time, I'm just making up an example. Uh, that to the next level is um, like Lot's family looking back at when they were told not to, and because of that, uh, turning into salt. Um, I guess if that really happened that way exactly, then that's what maybe it ended up um, seeing something that was so illuminating that looking at it evaporated every cell in their body of its fluids, and so just left the salts, the minerals, whatever, or the, I don't know. That's probably a little far-fetched, but so don't quote me on that. But I mean, things do have a practical explanation. There is a scientific explanation for everything. It's just whether the humans know it or not. So when this flood was sent against her, it says in Revelations 12:16, and the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood, which the dragon cast out of his mouth. Well, the term opened up her mouth and swallowed was used in the book of Enoch and was used in the Old Testament to indicate somebody absorbing uh, uh, that deluge of thoughts. And so, as a result, her vehicle broke down because the vehicle came from the earth. The vehicle was made out of earth elements and it was grown from earth elements. And so by absorbing this very powerful negativity, it accumulated stress on the vehicle that resulted in T's case was diagnosed as cancer in her eye, which is a very rare form of, if it was lymphoma, then it's a very rare form of cancer. If it's a melanoma, it's less rare. But I don't know for sure whether it was diagnosed as a lymphoma or a melanoma. But it doesn't really matter. Because if somebody wants to believe in Tiendo, then little less than 100% responses to what was going on then won't be needed. So the flood was swallowed up. And that's also a phrase that I've talked about before that has to do with being brought into the grave. Being swallowed up is going to the grave, and that's what happened to T. Although she was what do you call it when they burn your body. I forgot the name. I forgot what it's called. Doesn't really matter. I'm tired tonight because I had to spend like 2 hours shoveling snow to clear my driveway. So I need to get more energy into this vehicle. So that's where a T's exit is depicted in prophecy. Now, another prophecy that I wanted to go through that I haven't gone through thoroughly enough in the past, and I'm always seeing updates, so you have to bear with me if this is all a lot of repeat. Well, you don't have to. You can turn the channel, of course. But in Revelations 11:1, of course, I'm going to go through it. The first verse is there, basically organizing uh, where the borders are going to be for the next level's spacecraft to come and land on that part of the earth where the two witnesses are going to be doing their prophecy period. Because this is the return of Jesus and the Father. They came in two stages. They came first as incarnate, and then the next time they're coming, just Jesus is coming with those that graduated, the saints, to actually reap the second harvest, which is basically just taking those souls that believed in the incarnate older members. So to be saved, you have to believe, just the minimum is to believe that T and Do were from the next level, from the kingdom of God, kingdom in the literal heavens, and left the formula for becoming a member of the next level behind in their literature and their teachings that I, as one former student and existing student, are trying to pass on. Because when when Do comes the next time, it's going to be strictly to reap the harvest. He's not going to spend any time talking to anybody, because he's not going to have his he's not going to have his human vehicle, I don't believe. And so the only way you're going to recognize him is by having faith that it's him. But I mean, the reason you will recognize him is because you will before then start talking to him, and you will establish a relationship with him so that he knows that you're not just a believer in Jesus or God in some shape or form, but you also believe in him. And so by having that belief, you're setting up a channel to have ability to share his mind, part of his mind, the part that you can handle. Because you can only handle parts of it until you've grown to handle more. But where Jesus said the first will be last and the last will be first, that's referring to the Christians and how they're going to be last for the second harvest, even though many of them thought themselves right in line for the first harvest, but they were wrong about that. If they were right about that, then they would have left Christianity to just find out what else there was to think about. It didn't mean that they would have necessarily excommunicated themselves or anything like that, but they would have been willing to try things that were not considered to be kosher in terms of Christianity's kosherness. Like looking into reincarnation, or looking into evolutionary theory, or thinking about atheism as a potential way of seeing the world. All those things are permissible by the next level because they provide them. They provide all those thoughts so that we can end up choosing which ones to gravitate to. The mind from the next level, or the mind from the Luciferian space aliens that has been embedded into the human tree and looks normal to most of the humans. Remember, Lucifer was not a pitchfork with a goatee and red face and although there is a relationship of red to him, and and although he's not subject to the fire now, he will be soon, because during the next recycling, also all the souls that renegated against the next level will also be recycled. I believe it says in the scripture. Um, so well, before I start on this, I want to take a little break for a second. And so I'm going to put on some music that's for the Blog Talk Radio folks. I'll be right back. bow. They returned in carnal flesh, like a son of man, a woman and a male, yet the Father and her Son. From the literal heavens their task begun, with the comic Kahota to light up their way. As the two witnesses, they were shot down in the press, but stood up in spiritual Sodom after 3 days' rest. As two olive trees in Revelations 11, they're both anointed, both Christ from heaven, to overcome the Luciferian space alien and human world. And in so doing, taught their students just how to sever their roots and do it right now. It was time for graduation, the harvest of their souls, their next evolutionary step beyond human. In the press, they were called the UFO tube. As they said, the Bible's cloud of light was a UFO tube. They crashed primitive spacecraft in the U.S. Southwest as physical proof of their physical task. 24 elders plus 72 who saved souls made their crew. To come undercover like thieves in the night, as spirits do not cause human strife, to snatch away the ones prepared from their human roots to which they were snared, to follow Doe, the Lamb, wherever he would go. Help me have no human way. Help me have no human way. No thoughts of self, no faults to see. No thoughts of self, no faults to see. Only the ways of space. Only the ways of faith. Song they taught us. Now Doe came riding an apple-white horse. The human body he did take, with his first fruit soul litter in his right hand to open the heaven's gate. They laid down their bodies for the sake of Doe in heaven. Timed with comet hail pop by Palm Sunday of '97, their final act even conquered death. The red horses, Bush and Blair, dashed all prospects for world peace. As 9/11 shook the human world, global war will never cease. A 97 pact, a new Pearl Harbor they did seek, an excuse to invade Iraq, murder for oil they now reap. The black horse, Obama's nation, the latest puppet rulers yoked to steer. Financial schemes like corporate nations, further crisis will appear. As the seventh trumpet sounds, Wall Street gambling is profound. As the sun heats up the globe, and the rich prepare to hide beneath the ground. The green horse rider's name is deadly, accompanied by hell, many killed by military, hunger, disease, and traps as well. Angels are ordered to pour out their medicine vials. Believe in Tiendo or human, the choice to grow from troubles and trials. Those who call the names Tiendo and believe in all they said, and share in all with others, though some will want them dead. Yes, their bodies will in fact see death, but their souls they will survive. Saved as a second harvest, and renewed life as their prize. This talk may soon be halted, but at least you've had the chance to hear a part of their song and choose to learn their dance. The garden civilization must be stated before the little book will come. So while the face of Doe is still showing, the judgment time is not fully done. Help me have no human ways, no thoughts.
I'm back.
And I'm going to go into a verse in Revelation chapter 11 that I'm not sure I was very clear. Clear about in the past. And that's, well, I was actually going through verse by verse in Revelation 11 just to kind of summarize. So I said that Revelation 11:1 is when they're measuring, laying out the area of the temple size and where the altar is. The altar is the location where members of the next level are actually sacrificing their lives. And that takes the form, several forms. When they walk out the door of their life, that's sacrificing their human life. And then when they actually, if it's during a time where, like in the Jesus experience, when Jesus left and they were told by Jesus to spread the word, and they knew that they would also be hated because of it, so they knew they would also be bumped off as a result, and that's what happened. And that was all, they were informed to that, and they used their free will to decide that it was worth it, that they had identified so with Jesus, and he showed them so much about the reality of his having a physical body that he took into that spacecraft that was cloaked in the clouds with him. So they were on fire basically with his mind, and that's. But they still had to. They still knew that by spreading the word that somebody eventually would find fault with them and do them in. So, which is what happened for most of all of them. So, so that's also what happened with T&O and crew, except that the civilization had grown to be so corrupt that the strategy now of the Luciferian space aliens was to ignore and laugh at the next level and the entire effort, so that there wasn't going to be any seeking members out to stop them. That is until perhaps now, because in Revelation 14 it indicates that the second harvest is kind of a bloodbath. And that's because all those that are dissidents to the beast will in one way or another be eliminated. Which is that those that have formed a bond, however small or short-lived, with T&O, if when they're confronted, or if they're willing to stand up for T&O, which means tell others about what they taught. That's what standing up for is. It's not just if somebody asked you whether you were a believer in T&O or not, saying yes or no. Saying yes would be standing up for them. That would be part of it. And if they, arrested you or something because of that, You can be sure that uh, your soul would be saved. However, I, the most in-depth meaning of to stand up for is to actually be teaching what the older members gave us to teach. So if you're somebody that believes a little bit in this information or just wants to research it more, then study everything Tiendo said. And it's very available. It doesn't cost any money to have access to it. Heaven's Gate website has a lot of material there. And there's the Beyond Human series of videotapes that Doe made that are playing on YouTube. And then there's a whole bunch of audio tapes from meetings that Tiendo gave, which I don't think essentially are as important to a new student now. I think that's why they didn't make a point to make sure that those were distributed. Although I do believe that they should be distributed, made available, because they do show the way that Tiendo did things, which is very important, because so many people have in their minds that they were raving lunatics and that they were prancing around the stage, shouting, hell and damnation to everybody, which they did none of that. And they basically talk the way I am right now, and they didn't. They weren't trying to lure us into believing in them. They don't need to do that. They prepare the human vehicles that they want to prepare, and like Jesus said, many are called, few are chosen. So they prepare many human vehicles to receive their mind, and to identify them when they come and blow the trumpet, which is basically when they start talking publicly about where they came from and what they have to say. That's blowing the trumpet. That's announcing their presence, and the information is the sounding. It's the sounding of the words, literally, that that our vehicles identify, of course, by the language that's used, and mean something to us. And Tiendo used new terminology so that we could be brought out of our inaccurate thinking about the next level. Instead of thinking of the next level as a religion or as a spiritual quest, it has those characteristics when as a religion is actually a belief system, and which the next level classroom, in a sense, has a belief system associated with it. They have things that are major and minor offenses, which is like the Ten Commandments, that you would have that you need to obey if you want to be in the good graces of the older members, whether they're in the heavenly kingdom or they're incarnate. We need to follow their rules, because this is a training program. Tiendo talked about it like a God astronaut training program. And they were trying to teach us the ways of the next level, so that when we got on board a spacecraft where they have their laboratories, and a spacecraft can be as big as a planet, like they used the example of Pluto as possibly being a spacecraft. We need to behave, act with our thoughts and our our bodies in ways that aren't going to distract those that are working on very important jobs for the next level, for the propagation of their species, if you want to look at it that way, because they don't propagate by mammalian ways of intercourse, sexuality, sexual reproduction, and or by the way the plants do. The way they get new members is by offering those new members a little bit of their mind, and then offering them more of their mind if they continue to be thirsty for it. And that's done gradually. And at least in this last civilization, it's taken 3 trimesters. Tiendo talked about it in terms of being broken up into trimesters of a birth. And the 3rd trimester is graduation time, and that's harvest time. So the next verse in Revelations 11:2 is saying that the court which is without the temple, leave it out, and measure it not. For it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread underfoot 40 and 2 months. Now, if you actually look at the meaning of months here, which I'm not in the right spot here, am I? Okay, let's go back up here. Go to Revelation 11. And now we are at the right spot. Now if you look at months here, you'll see that 3376 in Strong's Concordance is main, spelt M-E-N, in the transliteration. And it's a primary word, a month. But, which I discovered kind of accidentally, but I was in the habit of trying to see if there was more information on this, because the way I was noticing this 42, 40 and 2, and it just so happens that there were 38 students that laid down their lives with dough, and then there were 4 that laid down their lives for dough within the next year after 1997, March of 1997. That were former members. They had been in the group for a while, some of them for longer than others, and they decided that they wanted to also leave. And Doe had told them that, Doe had said on the exit video that there would be a short window, the window would be open for a short time to where they could leave with them, as opposed to being in the second harvest. If I understand that correctly. But so when I saw this 42, and I always thought in the past, well, isn't that the same as 1,260 days? The same as 3.5 years? So why are we saying it differently? You know, why would the next level be putting out a prophecy? And I mean, there are mistakes, of course, in this made by the translators, sometimes because they didn't know any better, and other times because they just made mistakes. And frequently, a lot of their mistakes are because they were trying to come up with just a couple of words to have the meaning, instead of putting the range of things that it could mean. Even though that would make it into a much longer book. And yes, I guess it would be harder to give to a preacher to attract people with, and it would be harder for the layperson that doesn't have background to understand it. But then again, if you provided all that information, then the understanding they would get would have been many times more thorough and thus more accurate, because it would have been showing different ways of looking at it. So that was a Luciferian plot to keep people's eyes kind of in a one narrow view. Which I'm not saying that that narrow view was inaccurate. It's not that it's inaccurate. There's accuracy to it. Almost every word that's used has, in every verse that's been translated over these years, starting with the King James or even before that, have their forms of accuracy, but they're not the most accurate they can be. And this verse, because they're talking about people, they're talking about Gentiles, and then after that they're talking about the holy city. Well, the holy city has to do with the pure city. Holy means also pure. And a city is a walled area. And a city automatically means that there's people living there. So that means those people that are living in that city are holy people. That means they're pure people. In other words, they've purified themselves enough to where they're allowed to be in this holy city, which is the New Jerusalem, which has a new name, though. It's the New Jerusalem with a new name. And I believe that new name was Los Angeles, City of God, because Jerusalem relates to that same definition. As also it means the hills. And you see the Hollywood Hills right there? And it's also the San Fernando Valley, which Isaiah talks about the valley. As being Jerusalem. And so, all those different indications and more lead one to believe, and that's where Tiendo went public first. That's, of course, what drew me there at first, because it also means the city of God's people or God's angels, and that's where the first couple dozen joined, although that couple dozen didn't end up staying with them. But at least 12 did. But I don't know if it was 12 or 15. I should count that number, actually, because I do have that information, but I'll do that for a future opportunity. It's not that important. The numbers do match up with their numbers and prophecies. Very well, actually. And I'll put a post on my blog that talks about that. I actually have done that already, I think, but I'll put another one up there on sawyerhg.wordpress.com if you want to see how the numbers match up with the amount of students. I guess in short, because there were 12 and then there were 70 sent out by Jesus in addition to those 12, so that made 84. Tiendo had 70, so I had 12 in Los Angeles, and then ended up having 70 when they finally got to Chicago. And they were sent out from Chicago in all different directions, because that's when the news broke, and Tiendo were basically then a hot topic, because people knew their names and their faces at that point. And it wasn't a happy kind of thing, because they were being accused of kidnapping, and people feared that people that ended up leaving their lives behind to allegedly join up with a UFO to go into outer space were really being conned and were going to be murdered. Because that happened right after the Manson murders took place. Not the Manson, maybe. It was the person in the apple orchard, maybe. I don't know. I'm a little mixed up about that part. But But there was some kind of murdering spree that had just gone on, so people were thinking that, and then for some reason people were also thinking that there might be some suicide going on there, even though that was years before the Jim Jones experience. But the weird thing is that the movie that Tiendo, that one of the, I think NBC made, called The Mysterious Two, starring John Forsythe, which was a grade B movie. um, it, on the cover of the video, showed bodies laying all over the ground, just like the Jim Jones event. And that was published in 1982. So they were using the Tiendo story, but in the story they actually talked about, the storyline was from the Jim Jones storyline, part of it. So they were combining it because they were seeing it as another cult. And so this is what can happen when you join a cult. And they depicted Tiendo as having long flowing robes, and Tiendo had none of that. They had no religious or spiritual trappings. Anyway, so that's part of the Luciferian space aliens trying to mix everything up into the same subject, the same kind of way of disqualifying everything. So since this is now we're talking about this is a location, a geographic location on the Earth. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about the temple area being on the Earth. And the courtyard is part of that, but is not part of that. It's alongside the temple. I believe the courtyard is primarily east of the Mississippi River, and the temple area is west of the Mississippi River in the United States, in the mainland United States. And there may be other areas of the planet that are considered to be the courtyard, but I would think that they would be English-speaking areas, like Australia, New Zealand, England, Ireland, and perhaps some other places, South Africa. I don't know. I don't think they have to be necessarily limited to English areas, but that's where most accurate information about Tiendo was through the English language, which was also prophecy, that it was going to come in a new language. And to a new land also was part of prophecy, and Jerusalem wasn't going to be the city where he came to again. Another part of prophecy that was fulfilled by Tiendo coming to the United States. And wherever this was going to happen was also where the other flock, Jesus had more than one flock, he said, and he was going to that other flock after he left this one, the one in the Middle East that he was with. He was going to the other flock. And he said in the end time, those flocks would be combined to one area. And that was, I believe, where the Buddhist teachers and the Hindu teachers all came to the United States. Started coming to the United States in the 60s. And so that was all in preparation for Tiendo's arrival, because then people wouldn't be so against the idea of reincarnation, because they would have been exposed to it for some years in books and lectures and whatnot, so that they'd be basically starting their programming toward, even though Tiendo said that reincarnation that they teach in the East doesn't resemble the real reincarnation. The only form of reincarnation that exists, according to Tiendo, is when the next level brings you back to have a new body. and you're taking over a body that is not given a soul. It's given it's tagged for use, but it's not given a soul at that time. It may be given a soul in the future. For instance, like this vehicle that's talking now, I believe technically wouldn't have received a soul, but did receive a tag when it was a baby or sometime after. And but since I dropped out, I don't know if I just and then re-engaged in service to Tian-Do as I'm doing right now, and do have communication occasionally when Do has some correction to offer me, help to be a better servant. Whether they ended up giving this vehicle a new soul implant, or if I'm just growing from whatever I received before that. Maybe I got a soul in the beginning. Maybe I was too young to actually make it to graduation. Because Tian-Do did talk about how some in the class might have been there kind of accidentally, like they were a little ahead of their time. I don't know. I'm not trying to praise myself because it doesn't make any difference. Because I'm only graded by Tian-Do. I'm not graded by humans or fellow classmates or fellow believers. I'm not graded by any of them, and I'm not graded by myself either. So this can seem like I'm talking ego trip, but I'm really just talking about it this way for the sake of understanding. Because it's not about who you were. Like that's why the whole past life regression thing is, I mean, if people think they get help from it, fine. I'm not to say one way or the other, and I can't say that Tian-Do talked to it, except that what they said was that if you say you're somebody that was in the past, and a lot of times people were saying that they were Cleopatra or Jesus or somebody that was known and considered to be special. And Tian-Do would say, why do you want to be somebody in the past? That's like saying that you haven't grown. And he said he hated that sticker, that poster that was put on cars that said Jesus, the same yesterday, today, and forever, or something like that. And he says he was ready to throw up when he saw that, because that's despicable for Jesus to think about being the same forever. No, they don't want to be the same. They want to grow. They want to learn more. They want to have more tasks. They want to have more opportunities to serve because it's fun. It's exciting. It's interesting, and it's challenging. And they feel like they're actually doing something worthwhile when they're helping humans and their younger members of the next level to help the humans to make the choices to grow into becoming a member of the next level. So this is talking about people in this holy city. And they're on foot. So that automatically means that they have physical vehicles. They have feet. And it also means footstool. So they're treading on the footstool, which the earth is the footstool, but their body is a footstool as well. Because the body is like a cocoon for each student. When they take it away from the human kingdom, they're making it into a cocoon. And then from that cocoon grows the new body, which is what is given to humans as a seed to start, which is like putting a second balloon in a vase. And the first balloon was holding the spirit of the human, and the vase is the body of the human. And then the second balloon is the soul seed that's put in that vase. And the object is for the soul seed balloon to grow while the human spirit seed shrinks. So you get rid of your human behaviors and ways and memories and everything, and you gravitate towards only next level words and memories and ideas and behavior and ways. And so when you're when you've filled that container, the soul container, then is equivalent to your eye being single, and your whole body is filled with light. And at that point, you are an enlightened being. You are filled with light. It's really light is also, well, I'm not going to go there now because I talked about that last broadcast, and I don't want to keep on repeating myself too much. So it says that these individuals are treading underfoot 40 and 2 months. So now I'm going to, okay, so let's say they are treading underfoot 40 and 2 months, but let's say they also wanted to depict more than one thing, more than one just a time, because they're going to be basically traveling around on foot the holy city at the same time that the two witnesses are going to be prophesying for 1260 days. But the two witnesses' prophecy didn't need to have this other meaning to the word men, the Greek word men, which is right here. Oh, what am I doing? Going up in the wrong spot. No, go to months, go over to here, and you move that down. And now you see that 3375 also is the same exact meaning. I mean, the same exact pronunciation and spelling of the transliteration, the pronunciation, and the Greek word as well. UNV, or whatever those Greek letters are. But this one says a stronger form of the same thing. A stronger form of the same thing. A particle of affirmation. Assuredly. Surely. So these individuals are sure. They're affirmed. 3303 is another men. Indicated of affirmation. So three words that are spelt exactly the same. And same transliteration and same indicative of affirmation or concession, in fact. Usually followed by a contrasted clause. Well, I'm not going to go... all right, it doesn't really say much else there, so I'm not going to kind of go through this any further. That's enough to see that correlation. I don't see anything that disputes it. So these individuals are, yes, going to be traveling around for 42 months on foot, which doesn't mean that they're on foot. It means they're in cars or whatever the transportation is. They're on the earth. The earth is their footstool. It is the grounds where they have their vehicle, and the whole vehicle becomes a footstool as well, because it's through overcoming the vehicle and conquering the vehicle's characteristics, mammalian characteristics, that an individual doing so under the direction of the incarnate member of the next level. If there's no member of the next level there, you can do all the wonderful things. You can do all the best things, but the next level is going to say that they don't know you because you haven't set up a relationship with them. And it has to be with them. It can't be with a guru in the Himalayas that doesn't know about them, doesn't want to know about them. Because that you can do that, of course, and people do that. But if you want to go to the highest you can reach, then you have to reach to somebody that has already graduated the earth and human experience. And those gurus didn't do that. None of them graduated the earth experience, or they would have been, or when they died, they would have went to the classroom and been one of those students. So so I'm correcting myself that some of them might have actually graduated with as one of the 38, as some of the 38 or 42, or could be around now and would want to hook up with the vehicle so that they could start to get this information into their heads, which will assist in them accomplishing their next task even better than they would have if they didn't have any preparation. Because everything that you receive in your mind is saved. The next level doesn't throw that away just because you're leaving vehicles. That's the reason why the spirit offloads from the vehicle, is because that whole mindset can actually be put into another vehicle and can even take over a vehicle. And that's the other form of reincarnation, is that the dead humans, which Tiendo called discarnates and also called them influences, that seek to influence humans, do so, and by doing so, they are taking over that human's behavior and ways, because they want that human to do the things and say the things and think the things that they thought and said and did when they were living. That's what gives them their buzz. That's what makes them feel satisfied, when they're expressing themselves the way they were when they were in a living vehicle. So I'm going to go to the next verse, and this talks about how they're prophesying. $1,203 clothed in sackcloth. That's ordinary clothing. It's nothing special. It's not like they're dressed in robes, looking real spiritual, like Solomon, like Jesus talked about Solomon and how he's dressed in, that fine raiment, and he looks very kingly. And then there's all the priests of the high priests of the Jewish religion that wear their robes and love to be seen in the courtyards as being the holy ones, and they're all like, that's their reward. They're getting their reward. That's their choice, and that's their reward. For trying to look the part, whether they were actually living the part or not. And we know, of course, that many that become priests are not living the part. It's actually, I think, impossible to live the part 100% while adhering to a human organization that claims to be representative of the next level, which they're not. They're not the representatives of the next level. There is no church in the human kingdom that's representing the next level. The only way they can represent the next level is by teaching exactly what Jesus said and meant. Not just said, but meant. And that means teaching the formula of separation from the human kingdom. Like I said, you could do all the right things, but if you're not prepared to separate from the human kingdom completely, which will eventually mean separating 100% by leaving your body behind, which we're all going to do, but you can do it for the next level, or you can do it for the Luciferians. Well, then, if you're not ready for that, then maybe in the near future you'll be ready for that. So you can take it at your pace. And the next level, if they see you taking it at your pace and they don't think that's fast enough, they'll prompt you to move faster. That is, if you keep on asking for their help, their input, by your words and deeds. If you don't ever ask, you're probably not going to get much help. So the next verse says that these are two olive trees, two candlesticks standing before the God of the earth. Again, they're standing, so that has to do with standing up for. They're in human vehicles standing, walking around, talking, uh, uh, which it goes on to say in the next verse that these are, well, it's saying that if anyone will harm them in any way, uh, the potency of their thoughts will more or less evaporate the Luciferians' hold on that individual by their interpretation that they gave them. Because the Luciferians try to give humans interpretations so that they can keep them off track. And so when they will see the right translation, they'll be confused by it. And it'll be just too confounding, and they'll just, most of the time, just, discard it. And in that way, then the religions then become killers of souls. But it says this here to show that they have that power, and to equate them with Moses and Elijah, with Elijah in this case, because of the way Elijah called down fire from the Lord to devour groups of 50 renegades. And so Elijah was demonstrating that, and that's why people think that Elijah was one of these two witnesses. And then there's the next verse that says that they also have the power to shut heaven that it rained not in those days, and the prophecy, and have power over water to turn them to blood, and smite the earth with all plagues as often as they will. Well, of course, it's saying they have this power, but it doesn't say they use it. And the same with the other verse I just read. They don't say they use. They don't say they rise again from the dead, like a resurrection. In that verse, that is. So then the next verse talks about how he's going to wage war with them, and that the beast comes out of the bottomless pit. Well, where that's depicted, I've got two in chapter 11. Well, I'll just skip back to 9. Because 9 says, and the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. Now the star represents the fallen angel. They once were a star, but now they're falling from the heaven, coming from the sky unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. Bottomless pit is the deep, the depths. It may be bottomless. It may be that it's the center of the earth, if that's possible. I don't know if that's exactly true or not, but I think it's probably possible, and so that you can have the North Pole, and then you could have a very temperate area inside the earth in some respect, and then you could have the output being the South Pole, Antarctica. And that would explain why Hitler was so interested in Antarctica and the United States as well, with the bird, as well as the North Pole. So the next verse the sun and air were darkened by reason of the smoke. Well, there were probably some pretty big volcanic eruptions during that time in the 40s and 1950s. But let me get down to where the verse is that says, here it is, Revelation 9:11, and they had a king over them. Well, let me switch back to that. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is abandoned, but in the Greek tongue have the name Apollyon. So Lucifer is the angel of the bottomless pit. Abandon means destruction, and Lucifer is a destructor, a destroyer. He seeks to either destroy a soul by not allowing it to connect with the next level, or by destroying the vehicles and their capacity to become vehicles for the growth of older members of the next level to older membership. And note this happens right before the sixth angel, and the sixth angel is during the time that T and Do arrive and become incarnate, take over those vehicles. Incarnate simply means incarnal. Carnal from the carni, which is the flesh of the Jewish religion. So, excuse my slurping, but so I'm going to move back to 11. So if any man will hurt them, fire proceeds out of the mouth and devour the enemies. Any man will hurt them, he must in this manner be killed. Well, it also means harm or try to stop or any form of doing something against them. Again, I don't believe that being killed would be the way it would be handled in this third trimester. Unless somebody tried to kill them, then I would think they would be killed. But then again, it depends on the meaning of that word killed, which is apokataino in this case, which I've spoken about before, but there seems to always be more to talk about when it comes to that word. But this is telling them that they have the power to devour their enemies. Well, I already talked about this, didn't I, with the fire. And these are the powers shut heaven that it rain not in these days, and they have the power over the waters to turn them into blood, to smite the earth with all plagues as often as they will. Well, that sounds a lot like what the Moses experience was, so I think they are relating it to Moses as saying that this individual has this kind of heritage that's coming back. And when they have finished their testimony or are moving towards accomplishing it or coming close to completing it, it doesn't mean that they've completely done with it already. The beast that ascends out of the bottomless pit shall make war against them and shall overcome them and kill them. Well, right, overcome really means subdue, from the Nike. Except one of the Bible software things that I have here doesn't actually list it that way. But Strong's Concordance well, I'm just showing here where they come out of the bottomless pit and they start their war against the two. But it's shall overcome them and kill them. It's really shall subdue them. That's what happened when the press shot them down. They were subdued. They weren't literally killed. And then after that, some time period passed, doesn't say how long here, they are killed, which actually apokatino means separated from or by the death of their physical body, or separated by killing themselves even, would be an acceptable way of translating that in my mind. Though I don't think the next level would be doing that in this case. But it does kind of give that indication of laying down their lives. Because even them, at the end, the last word there, can also mean themselves. They're taking it upon themselves to kill themselves, which is not death of their soul body, and they know this. I mean, they can't prove it to somebody else who hasn't gone through it, but or doesn't open up to believing in it. But they can help anybody that does at least want to try to believe it. If you come upon a scripture that is hard to understand or is upsetting to think about, just take it in and put it aside and go to something else. But you will be able to learn to read through those parts and put up a blank card against any negativity or thoughts about your teachers that are inaccurate or judgmental. So they are separated from their bodies, but it's at a future date from when they're overcome. And so future date kind of suggests a shorter time rather than longer. I'm not exactly sure how far, though. I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So I wanted just to get to that place where it says overcome them and kill them, because that was a new thought from my previous translations. Let me go through this quickly. 11:9, and they are the people and kindreds and tongues and nations shall see the dead bodies 3 days and a half, and shall not suffer their dead bodies to be put in graves. So that means if they lost their lives on Times Square, they're not going to be put in graves. I have a hard time thinking that would be the case. But if you look at that word grave, actually, it talks about it being a memorial. So when they finally do lay down their bodies, which, well, I've already been through this, so And they, the people, kindreds, and tongues, and nations, shall see the dead bodies 3 days and a half. Well, there is no word uh, dead in this verse, and there is no word, and bodies doesn't exist either. But the translators put that in there twice actually, because they were trying to substantiate their belief that apokatino meant kill. But why even use apokatino as kill when apokatino means incorporates the prefix apo into it? So whatever you say katino means, let's say it doesn't mean kill or slay, then you got to put um, uh, that language in front of it and see if it makes any sense, which would be like separate by apokatino, separate by pension. So because so graves isn't the best translation here. It's basically a monument or memorial to perpetuate their memory. But they didn't get one of those because they didn't want people perpetuating their memory. Well, I'm going to skip a little bit because I've been through this part already. I'm just going to say that same hour is 40 years, next level time, was there a great shaking of the earth. And the 10th part of the city fell. So the Dead Sea Scrolls, perhaps? So, and then Revelation 11 goes pretty quickly to the end sighting, which is when he's coming in the clouds. But back to Revelations 12, when this dragon is identified, notice in 12:4, it says that his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven and did cast them to earth. And the dragon stood before them. Yeah, actually I have to do more research on this because I just discovered some aspects of the book of Enoch that talk about these seven. So I will skip over that for the moment until I can talk about that a little better. Because I was talking about how, then after the man-child is born, and he's set up to rule all nations, that tells you something also, because there's a number of places in the book of Enoch and the Old Testament where it is said that the Messiah will end up ruling all nations. So this is pulling from Enoch and the Old Testament and the New Testament, but in the Old Testament probably more so, because they want to make that link for you. The child is caught up, so because when T woke up Doe really didn't want to be awakened because he was kind of liking his life at that point. So even though I may be wrong to some degree about that, but but now after this takes place, then there's a war in the heavens. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon. Now again, it's not a war that we're going to see. It's going to be a war of words, understandings, um, because that's the way you can entrap somebody into uh, one belief or another, which the next level don't do. They don't entrap anybody. Uh, because they don't have any gimmicks to what they say. What they say is hard work. If you told people exactly what they're required to do to be on T&O's team, very few would take you up on it. Of course that's the case, especially in terms of giving their life. Who generally wants to do that? Well, um, I'm going to skip down here to the dragon, sees the whole world. And then Revelations 12:11 says they overcame him, the dragon, by the blood of the Lamb. That's the sweat of the Lamb, the effort of the Lamb, the laying down of the life by the Lamb. When the Lamb lays down his life, uh, they're saying that that committed, that aligned with the pancakes. Now I'm losing my, that was a joke actually, but I'm not going to go there. They overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto death. Um, uh, so now this is in Revelations 12 where they're actually literally talking about the student body. Because who are they talking about when they say, and they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their... Well, they're talking about the verse 12:10, actually. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now is come salvation and strength, kingdom of our God and power of his Christ. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down. If he is accusing the brethren, that's the individuals that are with these two, that are, in this case, I ran out of time, I see. And so I'm going to say good night, and we'll be talking in a few days on Sunday night if you tune into it. Good night.